Test. Alrighty, I'm going to go ahead and call the December 15th meeting of the Urban Renewal Authority Board to order. We do have a quorum with Alan, Debbie, Barb, and myself, and I don't see anybody else at the moment. But we can take action. So we are called to order, and I'll ask for a public comment. I don't think, well, I don't know. Can you unmute, Debbie? Okay.
You're muted.
Hi, Jim. We're going to get technical assistance here to make, we're not sure Debbie can unmute herself.
I can.
You can, okay. Nancy will come back eventually. So there's no public present, it doesn't look like, so we'll move to approval of the minutes of the November 17th board meeting, and those have been previously distributed. I'll ask for any changes, additions, or motions to approve. Barb moves for acceptance. Do we have a second? I can't see. Is Alan raising his hand? I'm blind here. So we have a motion on the table. All those in favor for approving the minutes indicate by saying aye. Aye. Sounds like it's unanimous. The financial reports for October, which I actually didn't print out, unfortunately, sorry about that. But they, I think as I recall, we had looked at September last month, and October, there's very little activity. I think our fund balance was $824,000. Thank you. I'll just check that if I can actually read this. Yeah, 824,494. Again, very little activity. If you go to page 3, you can see the year to date. We've collected almost all of the what would have been 130,000 in property tax. So if there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Or if not, a motion to accept.
I'll move to accept.
Motion by Barb. Second by Alan. Any further discussion? All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Unanimous. Old business, we have the bylaw revisions. And I think I'll turn that over to Jim. We do have a clean copy of the bylaws, but do you, Jim, want to just kind of walk through where there were changes in case we
Sure. Yeah, so there's not that many really, but on, let's see, 1, 2, page 3, on section 14, we just added a clarification at the last sentence that says a commissioner that objects to their dismissal has the right to be heard by city council prior to any dismissal action. That was on the advice of council. David Neville last month just said, you know, it's not critical, but it ought to be clarified a little bit. So I added that. And then on Article 4, the second paragraph, we talk about conflict of interests. And basically, the board was concerned last time about anybody participating remotely, maintaining confidentiality. So we added a sentence at the end, anyone participating in the executive session via teleconferencing shall make a statement that no other person that is not permitted to participate in the executive session is present with them. And then finally, in that same article, under general powers, section 1, added a sentence at the end about should there be a conflict between these bylaws and state law shall govern. And those were the changes.
And then Jim, didn't, one of the main changes was, section 11, where we took out the requirement that someone could be an officer only for 2 years during their 5-year term, right?
Yeah, but we did that, I think, as initial draft, yeah.
Right, section 11. So that has consequences, I think.
There's an N missing on the word section.
Ah, okay.
Sectio.
Oh, yeah, okay. Well, I will fix that. I don't think it's material for your vote.
Okay, good catch, though. All righty, so any discussion on those changes? Or if we're ready, I guess a motion to approve the revised bylaws.
I would make a motion, but I'm concerned that we don't have enough people here to actually pass the bylaws at this point. Don't we need
Yeah.
more than a simple majority, or is this
Yeah.
going to be okay?
Question, we have, what do we have, 8 members?
2, 3, 4.
And we only have 4 present. We probably should have 5 present.
Are you a voting? You're not a voting
No.
member.
So that's a good
And
point.
Tim's not a voting member.
And that's
You
a big,
know, and Alan Delich is supposed to join us here around 9 o'clock, he said. So if you want to postpone action until then, maybe you can wait.
we'll do that, because I do believe that's a good point, Debbie. We need 5. And we'll see if
Yeah.
Nancy can give Farley a call, because I think she's around. So given that, we'll move on to, we'll table that until we have a quorum, actually, and we'll revote everything we need a quorum for when we have one. And go on to the discussion of the intergovernmental agreement with the city. And if we know the status of that, then I guess, Jim, that would be you.
Yeah, I had a discussion with Denise Howell about that last week, and they have not progressed anywhere on that. When she suggested, and I think Debbie and I talked about this, that maybe the URA would go ahead and do a draft. We'll put our own, proposal forward. And then we can kind of go back and forth with the city on that. And she was going to discuss that with the mayor. I like that idea. I think that lets us get ahead of the game a little bit. And I've started working on one. I haven't had a chance to meet with David Neville. I wanted to get his input on some of the things. And then I wasn't quite sure on the process on how the board wanted to go about reviewing that. Do we want to review a draft before it goes to the city, to Denise, or do we just want to wait till we go back and forth and have a kind of a more agreed upon draft for the board to look at? It's up to you, really.
So I may have missed it, Jim, but who's going to put together this draft?
I was actually. I started working on it already. And then I think the board had said that, they wanted David, Neville, and myself to work on that.
Okay.
So I think, if we could draft it, that gives the city something to react to rather than the reverse.
Yeah, and I think it should definitely come to the board before it goes anywhere else when you get a draft. And it looks like Marcy is going to join us here in half a second. Hi, Marcy. So what does everybody else think about that? Have Jim and David draft kind of a rough cut of what we think should be in an IGA, bring it back for us to discussion?
Are we on a timeline of any sort?
No, I don't think so. No.
Denise wasn't sure that she actually wanted to bring this before council until like mid to late January.
And I would guess that's optimistic because it would come back. If you guys draft something soon, then we could discuss it at our January meeting, but
Yeah,
And
that's
then
what I was thinking. Yeah, I was thinking it would bring something in January.
yeah. Well, if everybody's agreeable with that as sort of a initial approach, I don't see anybody disagreeing, so we'll head that direction and then we'll retract everything we've done up till now. So Marcy, now that you're here, we didn't have, and I didn't realize we didn't have a quorum to vote on matters. So we had approved the minutes from the November meeting. Are you agreeable with that? Okay, and we had also accepted the financial report for October. Are you agreeable with that? Okay. And then we had a discussion of the changes to the bylaws. And do you want to hear Jim go over those again? It's what we sort of agreed to last month, but we have a clean copy. And if I think everyone, as I understood from where we left it, everyone that was here at that point was agreeable to approve the revised bylaws. Are you also agreeable? Okay, so we would need a motion and a second.
I thought Jim was bringing back. Sorry. I thought Jim was bringing back some of the comments that were made. We didn't have many comments, but the ones we did.
Right, and they're all in this
Right.
clean version. Yeah.
Yes, I thought that.
The lawyerly things are in there.
Yes.
Yeah, right. The lawyerly stuff.
Good.
So do we have a motion to approve the revised bylaws?
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Debbie, second
Second.
by Barb. Any further discussion? All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 That looks unanimous. Thank you. So we can now go on to Jim's executive director report. Jim?
Okay. Well, a couple things. The RFP for the communications plan was revised and has been distributed. We did have a non-mandatory meeting for Q&A for anybody that's going to possibly consider proposing on this. And actually, I was surprised. There was I think there were 5 different companies on that video chat. So I think we've got some interest in this. There is some concern, and I couldn't answer it, about the budget, not knowing what the target number is. And I just had to be honest and say, frankly, we as a board don't really know what these type of services really cost, and we're going to wait for them to come back. And I did say that it would be ideal if their proposal included a schedule of values that kind of gives us an idea how much of these services for each task would cost. So hopefully that's the way we're going to see these proposals come back. They are due on the 28th of December, and we were supposed to have selection by the 5th of January. And I'm not sure how the board wanted to go about doing the final selection. I know Barb and Farley and I have kind of gone back and forth reviewing the RFP. And I don't know if you wanted to have that be the committee that does a selection, or you want to bring the whole thing back, all of them, in front of the entire board.
Good question.
I think we all should look at it.
Yeah, I would tend to agree as
Yes.
well, that we should all look at them, Jim, when you get the proposals. So is that going to be an issue? Because we won't be able to do that unless we do it virtually by the 5th of January.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's not a given date. I mean, you can slide on that. But if you wanted to schedule a special meeting for that, I guess we could do that too. It's kind of tough with the holidays, but I don't know.
Well, maybe soon after the first of the year. We won't have them till the end of the year, pretty much. So
Yeah, as soon as I get them all, which should be the 28th, I can email them, and they're supposed to be submitted electronically. So I can email them out.
Okay,
I will be out of town the 3rd through the 8th
okay.
at the front end of them.
Okay. Why don't we leave it that you'll get them to the board? We can all take a look at them, see if we need a meeting in person, because we could do it. I suppose we could make a selection via email and then just ratify that at a board meeting. Perhaps.
I mean, I don't know how many we'll get back.
Probably no more than 5, but
You had 5, Jim, interested parties.
Well, there were 5 that attended the meeting, correct?
So you probably won't get all 5.
probably not.
Maybe we get 2, 3 at most, hopefully.
Yeah,
So, I mean, it's kind of dependent on volume, but we could rank order whoever submits
right,
and then compare our rankings
right.
amongst us as a cut and see where we fall,
Just do it by email.
but email or Zoom
Uh,
or whatever.
As long as that doesn't constitute a meeting.
Yeah, that's true.
But if we each individually send it to Jim,
Jim, yeah,
he could consolidate it and report out. Couldn't he? Is
Yeah.
that-
I think we could.
How about that?
But I don't think we can actually make a selection until we're in a public meeting.
No.
But, and I'm
I
not
think
sure,
that would
is
be the
it
right
time sensitive, Jim? I mean, could we wait till our January meeting to actually make a selection?
I don't see why not. I mean, I put together in the RFP itself a schedule. But that can be loose. It's not critical that it happen on all those exact dates. I would probably just notify the applicants that, the final selection date is slid and give them a new date of when that's going to occur. Otherwise, I'll probably get inundated with phone calls.
Right, right. What does the board think? Does that work, or do you want to try to schedule after we have a look at them? We get more than one, schedule a special meeting.
I think we should slide the date
Okay,
and avoid the perception, perhaps, that we're not acting within our regular scope. I just don't want to have a whole bunch of emails flying around.
right. No, we don't want emails flying around, that's for sure. So I think sounds like a workable plan. Jim will get us the proposals. We will review them individually, get Jim any feedback we have, including our informal ranking based on the proposals, and then we will set for discussion and decision that action at our January board meeting.
Which is the 19th.
19th, okay, January 19th.
So that's not too bad.
Does that sound acceptable? Okay,
Are there submissions proprietary?
I don't know, Jim, are they going to be proprietary?
Well, there is a section in there about proprietary information, but most of it is not supposed to be. So they're supposed to indicate anything that would be confidential.
Okay. Okay. All righty. So it sounds like we have a path forward there. Jim, did you have other items in your report?
Oh, sorry. That was kind of the main thing.
Yeah.
Let's see here. Obviously the bylaw changes. You've seen that, done that. The other thing that's come up, and I think maybe we talked about this last time, was the potential for affordable housing possibly on the LaFawn site. The city has identified a need, I guess, through, and Debbie may know more about this than I do. Under the Proposition 123, the state funding for affordable housing, the city has basically agreed to be part of that and has identified a need for about 42, I believe, units of affordable housing. I don't know how they came up with that number. Hannah said there's a formula that the state put together. And anyhow, that there's a need for that within the city. So it's not all necessarily having to be in the URA or even on one site. But anyhow, it's kind of up in the air. Debbie knows a little bit more about this. And I think we eventually need to meet with the Housing Advisory Board to talk about just how we go forward together on this. One of the concerns, and the developers for the LaFawn brought this up again, because we talked about the potential for affordable housing there, is, the same story. Density and height limitations may have an impact on multifamily. And they didn't come up with a number of units yet that they might be interested in doing. But I'm guessing that we would probably see a mix of affordable and market rate units in a development like that. And Rich Block had told me they were going to be meeting with a developer that they've worked with that does affordable housing developments. And I believe they did that. And then they also met with Hannah prior to Thanksgiving, I believe. So I think that's kind of the status on that. And I'm going to ask Debbie, do you have any more to add to that?
I don't. Nancy actually may, because she is the liaison to both the Housing Advisory Board and to us. But I haven't heard anything further since the meeting with the LaFawn took place, the Paragon developers.
Nancy, do you know anything further?
I don't have anything more current than that. Sorry.
So it does sound like at least there's discussion occurring between planning, Paragon, and if it becomes, I think, essential that we meet with the Housing Advisory Board, they would set that up, right?
The Housing Advisory Board does want to meet with the URA.
Okay.
And so I've talked with Debbie about that, and we'll get that set up.
You will.
I believe Debbie, myself, John, and the chair and vice chair of the Housing Advisory Board will meet first and kind of lay out potential way forward.
Okay, that sounds good. That sounds like a good approach. And then we'll just see where Paragon gets with their discussions, apparently. Okay.
And lastly, Ann, I did have a call. We have a bi-monthly meeting, Denise and I do, and talked a little bit about the Dillon Motel. And as everybody knows, the city is going to try to move forward with the acquisition of that. But she said there's a lot of due diligence left to be done. They haven't even set up a closing date for that yet. So she didn't really, have any interest in talking about, working with us or anything like that until they've actually completed their due diligence period and actually closed on the property. And she saw that quite a ways away, actually. She wasn't quite sure how long that was going to take.
Good. I'll just for a moment note that Alan Delwich has joined the board at 8:58. So any discussion on any of Jim's items? Okay.
I have a question.
Sure.
Jim. On the Dillon property, what can you tell? I mean, how did this all come about with the city? Do we know? You wouldn't know, Jim, perhaps, but Nancy, can I dig a little bit deeper and find out more about the Dillon property and ask you?
Sure. The city was very interested, and council, I guess, discovered that it was for sale. And
It's a big sign.
right, exactly. And there was a great deal of interest on council to have a parking lot on the east side. And so communicated with the property owners and came up with the price, and that's how it came about. So it'll be a parking lot.
So it sounds like they're in due diligence, and initially, I think in the meeting, Denise had said it could be very quick, but it sounds now
No,
like,
it's, my understanding is it's pretty much a done deal, so
Really?
I'm not, unless I missed something, it's pretty much through, so.
It sounded like that when you read the article in the paper. that
Right.
It was a done deal. But I,
Pass the resolution.
yeah,
but you certainly haven't closed on it yet, right? No. I mean, you would,
I don't know.
okay, okay. Okay, so it's either going to happen really soon or Jim says there's a number of steps to occur. So we'll wait and see, I guess. Okay, I think that exhausts what we know on that topic. Then let's move on to new business. We have city council liaison appointment. Debbie, your name's on that.
Yes, we, all of the chairs of the boards and advisory boards and committees for the city received an email from Mayor Graham shortly after the election about whether or not we wanted to retain our current council liaisons or make a change. And so I just wanted to report out that I did talk to Nancy about this, and she indicated that she wanted to remain as our liaison. So that's what I told the mayor. I also told him that if there was going to be a change made, we would prefer to have Natalie Johnson as our council liaison, since she was currently in a position to be the liaison to all the other economic development activities that the city has advisory or task forces going at this time, including the Downtown Development Authority consultation task force and the Chamber of Commerce. And the mayor was appreciative of that. Nancy said, or Natalie Johnson said she would be happy to serve in that capacity, as did Nancy. And I haven't heard anything further. And I don't think the council takes action on this until they're seated in January, right? The new council is seated in January, and then they make a decision about liaisons. But just to let you know, there will be a change in liaisons, and we have indicated that we'd like to stay with Nancy or have consider Natalie.
Great. Thanks, Debbie, for that. Any questions for Debbie? Then you're also listed for the next item, which is the 2024 meeting locations and format.
Yes, and I don't have an update about this now. Jim might. We've experienced such difficulties meeting at City Hall. So I raised the issue after our last meeting that we think about either changing the venue, going back to Zoom only, trying to meet somewhere else in City Hall or somewhere else in the city, because the ability for members who are at City Hall to hear those of us on Zoom is difficult. We've had technical difficulties in each of the last several meetings. So I just wanted to raise the issue again for everyone's consideration. And I had also asked Jim to check with Denise about perhaps meeting elsewhere in City Hall, even if we could cut down on the noise and not meet in the big community room. That alone might help us for those who are meeting in person. So I just wanted to have a little discussion about that and see if Jim learned anything in his discussions with Denise.
I have not had a chance to talk to Denise about that, but yeah, I think we just put this on the agenda for the board to discuss and kind of give us some direction. Actually, this meeting seems to be going pretty well today. There hasn't been any glitches, so I don't know. I'll turn it back over to you, Ann.
Yeah, today seems to be fine. So I would agree that we ought to continue to meet in person if we can. I think that's helpful. And this venue works. I'm not sure there's another location
French
That's,
Creek room,
could it?
I think it's
Okay.
nicer.
Well, maybe you ought to pursue that with Denise, Jim, the new conference room in the admin area. If they have the capacity to do the technology, do they? I've never done that in there, but maybe they do.
Got the big screen, so
Yeah,
anyway.
okay.
Need to find out.
So I think that's the direction we'd like, Jim, is for you to see if that's an option with Denise. And other than that, I think, at least from my standpoint, it is important to meet, I think, publicly if we can, in person. Alan?
Yeah, I'll agree with that. And in any case, if we did go back to Zoom, I think it's essential that we do it correctly so that we can memorialize the meetings, because not everybody can show up for an 8:30 meeting. And I think it's essential that people have the opportunity to watch the meetings after the fact, sort of like with council meetings, commission meetings,
Right.
we can always pull them up later. And I think that was a missing link before when we did Zoom, that, it was too hard to capture the content of
To
the meeting.
record it.
So
Yeah, no,
to
I
me,
agree.
that's really good. I'd like meeting in person if we can.
I do too.
I just have a question, thinking of what Alan speaks to. When we get these periodic reports from the city, from Denise's office, and it lists all the stated meetings in the month, we aren't listed. We aren't part of that notification. So I don't know how we reside in the scope of authorized meetings under the city umbrella
Yeah, we're a separate body.
entity.
Right,
So
right.
your comment makes me think about that in terms of what's required of us, that we can be distinctly different in
Right,
certain respects because we are autonomous,
right.
is my only comment to that.
Yeah, regardless, I think we owe it to the public, to our community, that we are accessible, whether it's part of the city or not. It's city tax money that we're allocating. And I think it's critical that
Right.
we serve our community.
I mean, we are listed in the document section. That's where all our materials posted. So Jim, maybe you could just raise to Denise that in that weekly report, that they aren't currently listing URA board meetings, and that would be a good idea.
Yeah,
I'm
you-
sure he'd be amenable to that.
Because that
I
speaks.
think they're listed on the website, though. I think the city lists our meetings on
Yes.
their website. Yeah.
Right, right. But not in the weekly report that goes out. So I think that's a good point.
Because that speaks to informing the public that we meet.
Right.
And that we are accessible.
Yeah.
That was where I was trying to get to.
Yeah, no, good points, I think, everyone. Okay.
I was going to say, we've talked about, being part of the community and how do we get the word out that we're here and that we exist, et cetera. So I agree that we need to be we need to be noted. And so that if the paper wants to carry something, they can find us, et cetera. Yeah, I agree. So if we're not, we should be.
Great. I think we all agree with that, and Jim will pursue that with Denise. So if there's no other comments on that, we'll move to the public hearing on the 2024 budget. And this has been duly published as required by state law. And so I will open the public hearing for any public comment on the budget. And this is the same budget that you all saw at our last meeting. And hearing no public comment, I will actually close the public hearing on the 2024 budget and bring it up to the board. Again, this is identical to what you saw a month ago, and it's accompanied now with the two resolutions that the state requires that we file when we post this with them. And that's a resolution basically approving the budget and a resolution appropriating funds. And we have, even though council at the moment has not agreed to provide sales tax TIF, to us to pay the obligations for the Holiday Inn Express. That remains as a line item in both the revenue line items, the revenue section and the expense section. So any comments, questions, or I think motions to approve the budget and the associated resolutions for 2024?
And does it have to be two separate actions?
I don't know. Typically not, no. What we're really approving is the budget resolutions. And they adopt the budget as we have in front of us here. So comments or motions?
I don't have a motion yet. And I'd like to ask Nancy, has the budget come up, has it been that relate to the URA? Has that come up in any discussion since our last meeting with council?
No. The only thing is that at Tuesday night's council meeting, Judith Chandler suggested that the URA could pay for the Route 36 bus for Mountain Metro.
Right, she did. And our past practice, which is well established, is that when the sales tax TIF has been withheld, we have then withheld funding for the shuttle. When we were getting sales tax TIF, we were funding, I think, probably almost all of the cost of the shuttle. So I did hear that, but that's not currently in the budget. And my recommendation would be it remain outside the budget. Any other discussion?
And that was the only item.
That's all.
I take to to the final.
There's been hints of interest, but no actual discussion to my memory.
And when do you approve the final budget?
Tuesday night.
Tuesday night. Okay.
Next Tuesday.
Next Tuesday. So it's not in there now, and it would take a change to.
Right.
It's been approved on first reading. Budget's been approved on first reading. So second reading is Tuesday.
So is the shuttle in someone's budget?
It's in the city's budget.
City's budget, no.
Right.
So nothing was excluded.
Right.
And was there any comments that came in relative to posting our budget?
No.
I'll move for acceptance.
So we have a motion for.
I'll second that.
Second by Alan Delwich. Any further discussion? All those in favor of that motion indicate by saying aye.
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 That sounds unanimous. Thank you. So we will move on to the city council liaison report. Nancy.
Thanks. Just a couple of things. As mentioned on Tuesday night, we did discuss the IGA with the Mountain Metro. So looking at some changes with that, as well as how the new trams, and if you haven't seen the trams, they look great. They were in the Christmas parade on Sunday night, and it's very exciting. There's also a public meeting on Monday night to look at how the trams might be best incorporated into the city's transportation, public transportation. On first reading of the budget, the only change to it was to leave property taxes flat from 2023. Not a huge change to commercial owners or residential owners, but nonetheless, I think an important change that will probably be appreciated. We did approve a columbarium for the donation for the cemetery. Dan Stewart and Ben Kunkel donated most of the cost to purchase that. So that's a nice addition for Manitou. We did approve the loan, the $1.5 million loan from PPLD. It's basically to cover rent for the next 25 to 35 years, depending on how you read the contract. But that the $1.5 million now allows us to go ahead and build the library. So we'll be looking this Tuesday at the contracts to go ahead and get the library built. We approved a change to our liquor license ordinance. And I will be blunt, it was to allow the old Stagecoach, whatever it's called now, to retain a liquor license. There was unfortunately, somewhere along the line, the Stagecoach had a liquor license, which was not in accordance with the ordinance. So we had to reduce the number of feet away from an elementary school or from a school in order to allow them to continue to get a license at that location. And then lastly, we approved park hours in an ordinance. Now park hours will only be until 10 o'clock at night. So no one will be allowed in the parks after 10 o'clock at night. And that's all I have unless anyone has questions.
Thanks, Nancy. Any questions for Nancy? Great. Then we are at other business. Is there any other business for this meeting? Seeing none, I will ask for a motion to adjourn at 9:50. Moved by Alan, seconded by, I'm sure, Barb. And we are adjourned. Thank you.